I'm going to do something a little bit different in this video compared to my usual ones. I'm going to talk about differentials, players that you can pick that not many other people have, and if they do well, you'll shoot up the leaderboard. Right, the first player I wanted to talk about then is Martin Odegaard. Now, I'll be the first to admit that he's not had the greatest start to the season in terms of both stats and obviously his luck with injuries. But I'm looking at the Arsenal fixtures coming up, right? Those next 7 fixtures you can see at the bottom of the screen just look, well, they look absolutely mega for them. Man United at home is, well, depending on how they play under their new manager, is probably maybe the toughest of those. But ultimately, you know, those are all fixtures where you'd expect Arsenal to score. And I think if Arsenal score, Martin Odegaard is in some way going to be involved in that, whether he's creating it or getting on the end of things. Now, I know looking at his stats so far this season, well, before the assist he got it was against Chelsea, wasn't it? Before he got that assist against Chelsea, he played 3 games and hadn't actually got an attacking return. But yeah, I just don't think that's going to be the case for the rest of the season. You know, it's quite clear how important he is to that Arsenal team. He's the club captain. He's going to start every game that he's fit for. Certainly looks like he's back to full fitness now. And yeah, I really like him as an option. And at 8.2 million, 3.5% ownership, I think he's a good price and a really good differential as well. One thing I'd really wanted to look at, so what we've got here is the top players for expected points for the next 3 game weeks according to FPL Review. I know FPL Review is a resource that a lot of FPL managers like to use as probably the best like projected points system, algorithm, whatever you want to call it, is available. And you can see there, Haaland, Salah, Palmer and Saka, 4 premium midfielders that you would always expect to be amongst the top midfielders in the game. And then in 5th place below those 4 is Odegaard, 14.8 expected points over the next 3 game weeks. I'd suggest that's a pretty good total. Little clue, I might talk about Bruno Fernandes later on in this video, but Odegaard actually tops Fernandes for the next 3 fixtures for expected points. So yeah, he's certainly looking, in my opinion, like a fairly decent option. And particularly, you know, if not many people have him, he certainly makes for a good differential. Extended on the point of Arsenal and Odegaard, I think the Arsenal fixtures are really good from an attacking perspective, but also I think they're really good from a defensive perspective as well. Looking at those next 7 fixtures, Nottingham Forest, West Ham, Man United, Fulham, I haven't got enough fingers, you get the gist. I think in quite a lot of those games, they have a reasonable chance for clean sheet. And my point around the Arsenal defence, and this is a case about talking differentials in this video, so it might be a case that you don't agree with this, but you know that would be sort of the consensus decision among the FPL community because Arsenal defence isn't all that well owned, particularly I would say the differential option here is probably to have 2 of them, maybe Raya and Gabriel, for example. I just think with the historic record of the defence that Arsenal has, you know, for the last 2 seasons, apart from this one, they have been the best defence in the league for goals conceded and expected goals conceded. And we've gone through, 11 game weeks so far this season, which compared to 2 seasons gone by is a relatively small sample size. And I would like to think that your FPL decision making on players to pick, teams to pick from, etc., could also be influenced by more than just the 11 games that have been played so far this season. And if you take that into account, I think the Arsenal defence, you know, they've got a historic record of being good. And yeah, I've got a feeling there's some clean sheets coming up, right? We've got there the clean sheet odds according to 11-5 for the next 5 fixtures. Against Nottingham Forest, 53%, West Ham, 42%, Man United, again, like I said with Odegaard, a little bit questionable as to what kind of Man United are going to be, you know, in 3 game weeks' time under their new manager. But they've 45% at the moment there, 41% against Fulham, and 55% against Everton. And it's Crystal Palace and Ipswich after that. And I would suggest those odds to be, they'd probably be 45% or over, to be honest, in this model. So yeah, I just think it's you know, if you're talking differentials, I think going double Arsenal defence, for example, or stacking up on the Arsenal defence, because, I don't know, I wouldn't have double Arsenal defence plus Odegaard. I think that's probably a little bit too much differential. But something like double Arsenal defence plus Saka, just with the fixtures that Arsenal have coming up, I think could be an interesting, different way to play the game. And if they do keep a chain of clean sheets in these next 7 fixtures, having 2 Arsenal defenders, I think, will set you apart from a lot of the rest of FPL, because well, not many people do have double Arsenal defence, and I don't think there are going to be many clean sheets to go around. So yeah, I think it will set you apart from the opposition. And, you know, with 2 seasons of really good data defensively behind them, those 11 games that have been played so far are a little bit of an anomaly. So I'd like to look past that and suggest that they could well be decent differentials. All right, I wanted just to look at the broader clean sheet odds according to 11FI here, just to see if there are any other differentials that might well be picked out. So this is the teams ranked in order for the likelihood of clean sheets over the next, well, 4 or 5 game weeks. Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool. You know, no real surprises. They're probably the 3 strongest defences in the league. And then in 4th place, interestingly, we've got Newcastle. And I think there's one Newcastle defender in particular that I like the look of. And that's Lewis Hall. 4.4 million, 3.8% ownership. He looks to have nailed down that sort of left-back spot for Newcastle now. And I think he's played better better from an attacking perspective when he has played than the assists suggest. In pre-season, well, I know it's pre-season, but Eddie Howe was basically using him almost as a winger playing in that fullback role, and he excelled in it. Obviously been picked for England during this international break. Got some minutes when he replaced Konsa. I really quite like him as an option, and I'm actually considering him for my team. I've got Rico Lewis in there at the moment, and outside of Rico Lewis at sort of the sub 5 million defender price point, can't really see all that many options around him. The 2 that I'm considering, and I don't think Mazraoui counts as a differential, but I'm going to mention him anyway because the Man United clean sheet odds look decent, apart from match days 14 and 16 when they've got Arsenal and Man City away. Yeah, I really like Lewis Hall. And the reason I don't like Mazraoui as much is because just with the new manager, new system, new formation, it's not entirely clear as to how Man United line up. So for that reason, I think given that he's proven, you know, to be pretty much Newcastle's first choice left back, I think Lewis Hall was a really good shout as a differential. And speaking about not being sure about how Man United might line up, one player you can absolutely guarantee is going to be starting for Man United, regardless of the formation they play, regardless of the manager that's in, it's got to be Bruno Fernandes, right? The only thing that would put me off Bruno is Arsenal and Man City away in the next 5 fixtures. But, you know, I guess you could turn the tables on what I said about the Arsenal defence and Man City, of course, in that they have conceded and leaked goals so far this season. And if you believe, you know, they're not very strong defences, then certainly don't let those fixtures put you off. And what I just love about Bruno Fernandes is he is a player that starts every single game that he's fit for, and he just never seems, well, that's his famous last words, but he very rarely gets injured. He's one of the most available players I've ever seen, and he's on penalties, free kicks, so creative. I think he's really good from a goal scoring perspective when he's not on free kicks as well from open play. And I just think this season, and probably last season as well, he's been really unlucky with the expected data that he's put up and the actual returns that he's gotten. Now, they have sort of balanced out over the last few games. He's got 11 appearances and 6 attacking returns. And if you round up the XG and XA, that's in and around 6 attacking returns, to be fair. But what I would say is that in most cases, players tend to outperform their expected assists anyway, to a greater extent than probably Bruno Fernandes has done already. So potentially he could have gotten more assists than he already has. Certainly could have scored more goals than he already had. So say he got those 4 assists, and then if he actually matched his XG beyond 4 goals, that's 11 games and 8 attacking returns. I think if that came to fruition, that XG, a lot more people would be considering him for their teams. I've got to say, I think a lot of people will be anyway. But at 12% ownership, I think you can still class him as a bit of a differential. And yeah, I just go back to what I said at the start about him, that he's available for every game, plays 90 minutes, takes penalties. For me, that's kind of all the boxes you want in an FPL asset ticked. And that's what Bruno Fernandes gives you. And I think at 12% ownership, I do imagine that will probably rise in Game Week 12. But regardless, I think he's still going to be under maybe 15-20% ownership. And there are certainly midfielders in the game that are far more popular than that. Yeah, I really like him as an option in FPL, and I'd still consider him a differential. So he came off the bench in Game Week 11. I was going to say 12 then. We got Game Week 12 coming up. He came off the bench in Game Week 11, and that looked absolutely sensational for Brighton, did João Pedro. 7.5% ownership, and I would hedge a bet that a lot of that ownership is actually inactive teams that picked him from the start of the season and then just have stopped playing the game. Because, of course, you know, he was out with injury for a few weeks. 5 appearances, 4 attacking returns, and he's 5.4 million. And those fixtures coming up for Brighton are absolutely excellent for those next 5. Bournemouth, Southampton, Fulham, Leicester, Crystal Palace. Those are fixtures where I would suggest he could score in every single one of them. Genuinely think he could. The only seed of doubt that's in my head about João Pedro is potential rotation. Now, Hertzler, the Brighton manager, was pretty kind about João Pedro before his injury, basically saying there's no other player in the squad like him, basically bigging him up to be kind of their talisman in first name on the team sheet from an attacking perspective. But Danny Welbeck and Ruta have been playing really well, and I would suggest that if João Pedro were to get into the starting lineup for Brighton, he would have to displace one of those players who, like I've just said, have been playing really well. And I think it's undeniable that Danny Welbeck's been good, and same with Ruta. So there is a little bit of a risk there in João Pedro, I think, just that he's got some stiff competition for the positions that he could play. And also, I'm not entirely 100% trustworthy about his injury record, particularly I'm nowhere near as big on his injury record as I am with Bruno Fernandes, for example. So, you pick him, there was a little bit of a risk that he could get benched, little bit of a risk, of course, that he could get injured again. But 7.5% ownership, 5.4 million for a player that's got 4 attacking returns in 5 appearances, I think you can't really go wrong, I don't think. And even if he doesn't deliver massively and gets an injury at 5.4 million, you could stick him on your bench if you really wanted to. And I wanted to extend the point about João Pedro to other cheap forwards as well. So what we've got here is a list from FPL Review again of the top cheap forwards for expected points over the next 3 game weeks. Raul Jimenez, Chris Wood, Danny Welbeck. I don't think you can count those as differentials anymore. I'd say Chris Wood's probably the most popular of the 3. Raul Jimenez and Welbeck, sort of differentials. Evan Nilsson of Bournemouth, I do like. Not sure about Jamie Vardy, Calvert-Lewin, Cunha, Højlund. Maybe, depending on how they line up and play under their new manager. Strand Larsen of Wolves has been pretty good. Actually putting up competitive numbers with Cunha, but he did unfortunately leave in game week 11 with an injury, so we'll need an update on him before I could recommend him for your team. Wissa's quite low in terms of the expected points, but he has been performing really well for Brentford. Whenever I watch Wissa play for Brentford, he looks like he could score every time he steps onto a football pitch. And I think not only is there João Pedro at this price point that's a bit of a differential, I think you've got loads of other options there as well. I think if you're thinking really super mega differential that not many people have, Evan Nilsson, João Pedro, and Strand Larsen and Wissa. Those 4, I think they'll do you quite nicely and are relatively low owned. Alright, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that. I must say, the background is looking a bit questionable, isn't it? You could probably tell where I am. I'll let you guess. But yeah, if you wanted a little bit of an interesting insight into my trip to Venice, this hotel room is questionable. I posted a video of it on my X account. It's X now, not Twitter. You've got to keep remembering that. So yeah, if you want to check that out, check me out on Twitter and you can have a laugh at my expense as to the terrible hotel room that I've been given. But that does the job, doesn't it? I also just wanted to say, I don't think there's any damage to be done by saying this. This trip has basically been paid by some of the revenue that I've made from the YouTube channel. And I've had a lovely time here. And I just want to say thank you, basically. The channel, you guys watching, interacting, subscribing and viewing my content has basically allowed me to take trips like this that I probably wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So, and I just want to say I'm so grateful for it. And the least I can do is take my kit out on holiday and get some content out for you while I'm here. Not only because I feel like I have to, but I also just love it as well. And I don't feel like I have to, you know what I mean. I'll stop monologuing now. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments what you think of those differentials and if there are any others that you pick for your team that I haven't mentioned in the video. I think that's everything. If you're new around here or watch my content but haven't subscribed, you can subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which should be just there on your screen. Sorry about the lighting. I think it's just about bearable though. I couldn't really do anything about it, so you just have to deal with it, I'm afraid. But I think you can still make out what I'm seeing and saying. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.